You ever feel the air shift in a room before anything actually happens? Like the storm's already arrived, but you're the last idiot standing out in the open, still thinking the clouds are just passing through? That was me. March 4th. Cold wind, colder words. She stood at the top of the stairs, bags packed like she was heading off to war. And maybe she was. Just not the kind where anyone wins. I'm taking the house and the dog, she said, like she was placing an Amazon order, not bulldozing our life. I blinked. Not because I didn't hear her. No, I heard her just fine. It was the casual cruelty in it that caught me off guard. You can have the child, she added. Our son. My son. Her mother chuckled from the kitchen. At least the dog is trained, she said, like she was auditioning for some bitter mother-in-law sitcom. Never liked the woman. Never said it out loud. But that day, I filed the feeling under raging confirmation. I wanted to say something smart, something razor-sharp that would flip the moment on its smug little head. But I just stood there, shoes still wet from the rain, staring at the woman I once called my wife. The woman who used to dance barefoot in the kitchen, who'd cry during Pixar movies and hold my hand under the table during family dinners. Now she stood there like a bank manager foreclosing on my life. She didn't look angry. That would have been easier. No, she looked indifferent, like all the love had been drained out of her and replaced with a lawyer's script. I'll file the papers, she said. And she did. Fast forward 6 months, give or take a few passive-aggressive texts, weaponized birthdays, and a therapist who eventually started siding with me. The custody battle wasn't just about parenting anymore. It was about pride, about punishment. She didn't want our son. She wanted to win. And me? I didn't want to win. I just wanted my boy to be okay. He was 9, old enough to know something was wrong, too young to know just how deep betrayal can go. At night, I'd catch him staring at the ceiling, his small chest rising and falling like he was bracing for aftershocks that hadn't even hit yet. She says you're turning me against her, he whispered one night, curled in his blanket like a burrito of fear. I clenched my teeth. Not at him. Never at him. I just want you to know the truth, I said. He nodded. Said nothing. That was the first night I knew he didn't believe either of us anymore. Then came the day of the trial. You know those courtrooms on TV? Full of gasps and gavels and dramatic monologues? Yeah, this wasn't that. This was beige walls and bad coffee, suits that smelled like desperation, and lawyers billing by the breath. My ex sat across from me, unreadable. Her mother was behind her, looking like she'd just won a raffle for most smug grandmother in a supporting role. The judge, a woman named Kincaid with steel in her eyes, looked at us like we were 2 teenagers caught shoplifting morality. And maybe we were. They'd just finished arguing over visitation schedules, her lawyer insisting our son should split time evenly, even though she hadn't made it to 3 of the last 5 pickups. My lawyer, God bless her caffeine addiction, was holding the line like a Spartan with a clipboard. Then it happened. My son, God, this kid, he stood up. Just stood. No one told him to. He walked right up to the bench, small shoes squeaking on linoleum like they were trying to apologize for what was coming. The room froze. Dad, he said, his voice clear, practiced like he'd gone over it in the mirror a dozen times. Can I read what my mom sent me last night? Her lawyer went white. My ex shifted. Her mother made a sound that wasn't quite a gasp but wasn't denial either. Judge Kincaid raised an eyebrow. She looked at him, not me, not her. Him. You have it with you? She asked. He nodded, reached into his hoodie pocket and pulled out a crumpled phone. Swiped. Paused. Breathed. Then he read. I won't repeat all of it here. Not yet. You need time to earn that burn. But I'll tell you this, it wasn't a bedtime story. It wasn't a sweet dream message from a loving mother. It was a guilt bomb laced with venom, sentences like, he's only pretending to care, and one day you'll see he never loved either of us. Stuff no kid should hear, let alone from the woman who gave him life. The judge didn't say a word at first, just stared at her, then at me, then back to the boy, who stood there like David in a courtroom full of Goliaths. Tell the truth, she said. And just like that, the tide turned. He stood there, all 4 feet and a whisper, holding the room hostage with nothing but truth. My son, my quiet, wide-eyed little boy, he didn't stutter, didn't glance at me for backup. He read those words like they were written in fire. I'd never been more proud and more heartbroken. The judge didn't interrupt. Not once. She let him finish. Let those vile words echo through the chamber like a hymn of betrayal. Her mother, the self-appointed family matriarch of manipulation, clutched her pearls like she hadn't just laughed about the dog being more valuable than her own grandson a few weeks earlier. The silence after he finished? You could bottle it and sell it as judgment. Who sent you that message? The judge asked, voice even. He looked her dead in the eye. My mom. No flinch. No hesitation. Just truth, raw and bleeding. Her lawyer, bless his Ivy League soul, tried to object. Something about emotional duress or inadmissible evidence. The usual smokescreen. But Judge Kincaid held up a single hand. Sit down, counselor. I don't think he sat. I think he deflated. My ex, she didn't cry. She didn't plead. She crossed her arms and stared out the window like this was all just beneath her. That's the thing about narcissists. They don't break, they calcify. The judge leaned forward. Son, is this the only message your mother has sent like this? He hesitated, then reached into his other pocket and pulled out a folded piece of paper. Handwritten. Now I wasn't ready for that. He unfolded it slowly, like it was a contract with the devil. And maybe it was. I recognized her handwriting immediately, small, tight cursive, controlled like everything else about her. He read, If your father really cared, he wouldn't be fighting me. He's doing this to hurt me, not because he loves you. You'll see. He always puts himself first. No signature. No warmth. Just ink dipped in poison. The judge exhaled, a long, slow stream of restrained rage. I sat frozen. Not because I was surprised. I knew what she was capable of, but because now the court knew. The mask had slipped. And underneath? Just teeth. Kincaid turned to her. Is this your handwriting, Ms. Lawton? My wife, ex-wife-to-be, lifted a shoulder. He's been brainwashed. Probably forged it with his dad. Oh, she went there. I could feel every vein in my neck pulse. I didn't speak. I didn't have to. The judge's eyes snapped so hard in her direction, I swear I heard a whip crack. You're accusing your 9-year-old son of forgery, she said, voice like steel dragged across concrete. Her mother tried to whisper something into her ear, but she swatted her hand away like an annoying fly. Do you deny writing the message? The judge pressed. She said nothing. Do you deny sending the text? Still nothing. My lawyer, stone-faced, glasses halfway down her nose, slid a printed screenshot across the table. Timestamped. From her phone number. We have carrier records. That was the crack in the dam. Her lawyer leaned in, whispering something frantic. Damage control. But it was too late. The court saw it. My son showed them what I couldn't with all the affidavits in the world. Her cruelty wasn't an accident, it was a tactic. I reached over, placed my hand on his shoulder. He looked up at me, not for approval, but for reassurance. He didn't want to win either. He just wanted the lies to stop. And maybe that's what finally broke the judge's patience. I'm ordering an immediate psychological evaluation, she said, standing. For both parents. Emergency temporary custody is granted to the father, effective immediately. Just like that. My ex's face finally changed. She stood up, shouted something incoherent about parental alienation and injustice. The bailiff stepped forward like a shadow with a badge, and she sat back down fast. She looked at me like she finally saw me, not the guy she once manipulated, or the fool she thought would cave, but the man who stood up and stayed standing. For the first time in months, I felt something click back into place. Not joy. Not relief. Resolve. The courtroom emptied like a theater after the villain gets unmasked. Her side cleared out first, silent, stiff, with the kind of energy you feel at a funeral for someone nobody really liked. Her lawyer didn't even make eye contact with her. He just packed his briefcase with all the desperation of a man trying to backpedal out of a crime scene. She stood there like a statue, lip curled, arms crossed, but the confidence had bled out. She didn't know what to do without control, without a narrative she could spin. And me? I didn't smile. I didn't gloat. I just walked over to my son, bent down, and said, "You okay?" He nodded. Do we go home now? That hit harder than anything in court. Do we go home now? Like, home was a place we hadn't really known in months. And he was right. It wasn't just about walls and furniture. It was about peace, trust, safety. And for the first time in a long time, I could finally say, yeah, bud, we're going home. We didn't go back to the house she took. No, that place was a mausoleum now. I let her keep her cold little castle. I'd started renting a place 2 towns over, quiet street, big trees, backyard with a swing I built on a weekend when I couldn't sleep. I made that house ours while the lawyers bickered over assets. Funny, isn't it? She wanted the dog and the drywall. I took the soul of the home instead. That night, after I tucked him in, I sat alone in the living room, staring at the ceiling fan spinning slow and steady. I was exhausted, but not just from the day. From everything. The pretending. The hoping. The trying to salvage a marriage that died the moment she started treating love like a transaction. She didn't cheat in the traditional way, at least, not yet. No lipstick on the collar, no stranger in our bed. No, her betrayal was more insidious, more strategic. She cheated with lies, with manipulation, with silence weaponized like a blade. Her betrayal wasn't in what she did behind my back, but what she said behind closed doors. What she whispered to her son. What she told herself so many times she believed it, that she was the victim, the hero, the only one who deserved to be happy. 2 days after the trial, she tried calling me. 4 times. No voicemail. Just the name on my screen like a ghost knocking on the front door. I didn't pick up. Not once. On the 5th attempt, she left a message. Her voice was syrupy sweet, like someone trying to pour honey over a shattered mirror. I think we need to talk about what happened in court. That was completely out of line. And, well, it's not too late to fix this if we can be civil. Fix this? That was rich. Her idea of civil meant I rolled over, played dead, and handed her the leash to my son's future. I forwarded the voicemail to my lawyer. No reply. No comment. Just added it to the growing file we were now calling Exhibit, Emotional Whiplash. A week later, my son got a letter in the mail. No return address, but I knew the handwriting. She might have thought that skipping the name would give her plausible deniability, but come on, I knew that cursive better than my own signature. I opened it before he could. Call me overprotective. Call me controlling. I call it parenting. Inside? A guilt trip dressed like a love note. She wrote how much she missed him, how unfair everything was, how Daddy's lawyer tricked the judge. She even had the nerve to write, "When you're older, you'll understand." That line lit a fire in me I hadn't felt since the day I caught her looking up apartments before she told me she wanted out. I didn't burn the letter. I documented it. Sent it straight to the therapist the court had appointed and our attorney. And then, I sat down with my son. I told him the truth. Not the ugly parts, he didn't need to carry that weight, but the honest ones. That I would never make him choose sides. That love isn't a contest. That his feelings mattered more than any custody agreement ever could. He listened, nodded, then said something that nearly broke me. "She always said you'd lie to me. But you never did." That's the kind of sentence that sticks with a man. That night, while the house was quiet and the dog, yeah, I got a new one, a mutt with one ear who listens better than any human I've met, curled at my feet, I wrote down every promise I planned to keep. For my son. For myself. Because this wasn't just about surviving her anymore. It was about rebuilding something better. You can always tell when someone's losing control, not by how loud they get, but how desperate they become to appear calm. She started posting cryptic quotes online. You know the ones. Stuff like, "A lion doesn't concern itself with the opinion of sheep. Sometimes the villain is really the victim." That sort of vague, passive-aggressive nonsense people post when they're too cowardly to say what they mean out loud. She must have thought those posts made her look wise, empowered. But all they really did was peel the mask off, 1 pixel at a time. People started noticing. Friends she'd bragged to, allies she'd manipulated into believing I was the cold, distant one, they stopped engaging. Some even messaged me. Quietly. Carefully. Like they were sneaking into the truth through the side door. One of them, a guy from her book club, of all things, sent me a screenshot of a group chat. "You think she really lost custody by accident? That kid read a letter in court. It wasn't good." Another said, "She told us he was controlling, but I've seen him with the kid. She's not even trying to see him now. What kind of mom does that?" See, here's the thing about lies. They need maintenance. Constant upkeep. Once a crack forms, the whole thing starts to cave in, and hers was practically a sinkhole. Meanwhile, the evaluation came back from the court-appointed psychologist. Nothing too dramatic. No official diagnosis for her, but plenty of red flags. Emotional manipulation. Inconsistent parenting. A clear pattern of trying to alienate our son from me. The judge ordered monitored visits until further notice. And just like that, the house she took started to feel like a gilded cage. I heard she'd started redecorating. Bought new curtains. Hired a dog trainer. Polished the facade. But you can't scrub bad energy from the walls. You can't light enough candles to hide the fact that the child's room sits empty, not because he died, but because she killed the bond. She asked for one of the first monitored visits to be at her house. Familiar surroundings, she said. Our son refused. Said the house gave him a stomachache. So they met at the therapist's office instead. Neutral ground. Half an hour. I waited outside with the dog. My phone buzzed after 20 minutes, visit cut short. She told him, again, that I stole him from her, that the court was punishing her unfairly, that he was being used as a weapon. You know what my kid said? I'm not a weapon. I'm a person. He came out of that room like a soldier walking off a battlefield he never asked to fight on. He didn't cry. He didn't shake. He just walked up to me and said, "Can we go now?" We went for burgers. He laughed at the way the ketchup bottle farted when I squeezed it too hard. We talked about dinosaurs and roller coasters and whether dogs dream. He never mentioned her once. That night, I got an email from her lawyer. My client is requesting a formal review of the custody terms. She feels alienated and believes her parental rights are being infringed. Alienated. That word again. I didn't respond directly. I let my lawyer do her thing. But I'll tell you this. The only person doing the alienating was the one who thought a child was just another piece on her chessboard. And the game? She'd already lost. The best part? I didn't have to destroy her. She did it herself. People always think the end of a battle is loud. Fireworks. Explosions. A final, glorious bang. But real endings? They're quiet. A paper sliding across a desk. A door clicking shut. The last message left unread. It had been 2 weeks since the court restricted her visits. She hadn't tried to call again. Not directly. She'd started using proxies. Her mother, a cousin I barely remembered from our wedding, even a neighbor who used to borrow our snow blower and forget to return it until spring. Each one brought the same message, just repackaged with new guilt. She just wants to talk. This isn't fair to her. Don't punish her by keeping the boy away. Punish? She's the one who picked up a verbal knife and kept swinging until our son stopped running toward her and started bracing for impact. But she didn't see it that way. She couldn't. People like her don't see wreckage, they see resistance. And resistance, to them, is betrayal. So, she did what cornered people do. She pulled a stunt. That Saturday morning, we were at the park. Me, the kid, the dog. Sunshine. Blue sky. A rare pocket of peace. He was playing on the jungle gym, laughing for real, the kind of laugh that doesn't come with caution. The kind I hadn't heard in months. Then she showed up. Not with a lawyer. Not with permission. With a camera crew. I kid you not. 2 people. One holding a DSLR. The other with a boom mic clipped to her jacket. Local activists, apparently. She was raising awareness about fathers weaponizing the courts and maternal erasure. She walked up with fake tears and real makeup, microphone clipped to her blouse like she was about to anchor the evening news. I stood. Instinct kicked in. The dog barked once, low and serious. She started talking, loud enough for the whole playground to hear. This is my son. I haven't been allowed to see him in weeks. This is what they're doing to mothers now. Look at him. He doesn't even recognize me. Our son turned. His face twisted, not in confusion, but fear. He grabbed the monkey bars like they could protect him. The cameraman zoomed in. That's when I stepped in front of the lens. Not yelling, not threatening, just standing between my son and her circus. You're violating the court order, I said, calm as I could manage. Back away. Now. She scoffed. Oh, so now I'm not even allowed to speak? To see my own child? Are you listening to this? This is what they let fathers do now. This is abuse. I held up my phone. Pressed record. Her expression faltered. You want footage? Let's both have some, I said. You show yours, I'll show mine. The cameraman started to lower his camera. The boom mic girl stepped back. They weren't expecting this. They thought they were filming a sob story. Instead, they stumbled into a custody violation on tape, in full color, with a child visibly afraid in the background. The dog growled again. She backed off. Go ahead, I said. Post it. Show the world what a restraining order violation looks like. I've got witnesses. I've got timestamps. I've got the kid. She didn't say another word. Just turned and stormed off. The crew trailed behind her like interns who realized too late they'd hitched their wagon to a dumpster fire. I called the lawyer. Filed the report. Filed the footage. The next week? Emergency hearing. Her supervised visits? Suspended. The footage spoke louder than any affidavit. The judge didn't even raise her voice. Just signed the order and said, Ms. Lawton, you've shown us exactly why these measures are necessary. And just like that, she lost even her limited access. She cried in court. Finally. Not out of sorrow for herself. Because that's all she ever really loved. After that final court date, things got still. Not peaceful still. Like the silence in a room where someone's just screamed, and you're waiting to see what breaks first. the air, or the person who made the noise. Our son was sleeping better, eating better, smiling more. But I could still see it in his eyes sometimes, the hesitation. Like he was afraid calm was just another trick. He'd glance at the front door when a car pulled up, check the windows when the mail hit the floor. It wasn't paranoia. It was memory. I never told him about the hearing, about how she tried to stage a scene in the park like we were props in her soap opera. He didn't need that weight. He had enough. But the damage she'd done still lived in quiet corners. Like the time I found him throwing away a drawing he made of her. I asked why. He shrugged. She doesn't want to see it anyway. I didn't say anything. Just pulled it out of the trash, flattened the crumples, and slid it into a folder I kept in my desk. A record. Not for court. Not for revenge. For him. So one day, when the memories are more fog than blade, he'll see the full picture. Not just what she did, but who he was through it. Then, about a month later, something came in the mail. An envelope. No return address. But again, with her? You just know. I opened it carefully. Inside was a letter, not typed, not printed, handwritten, but not in her usual style. This was shaky, uneven, like the hand that held the pen wasn't sure if it should even be writing. I read it once, then again, sat down and read it a third time with the kind of stillness that only comes when something inside you is recalculating. Here's what it said. I don't know who I am without the fight. I thought if I won, I'd matter again. But I don't even know what winning is anymore. I tried to use our son to keep a piece of myself that was slipping away. That was wrong. You were always the better parent, and I was too proud to admit it. Maybe this letter doesn't change anything. Maybe it's just for me. But if he ever wants to talk, I'll wait. And if he never does, I understand. You don't have to forgive me. Just don't let him think he was the reason for the war. He was the only part that was ever real. Asterisk. No signature. No apology, either, not directly. She wasn't built for that. But it wasn't rage. It wasn't blame. It was surrender. The timing was suspicious. Maybe her lawyer told her to write it. Maybe she was trying to plant seeds for future access, soften the court's view. I'd be lying if I said I didn't consider that. But part of me also knew, when someone loses everything they used to define themselves, they either vanish or they face themselves. This letter read like someone staring in a mirror for the first time in years. I didn't show it to our son. Not yet. Maybe not ever. That choice belongs to him, not me. But I placed it next to the drawing. Same folder. Same future. And here's the thing that still stings. I wanted to be angry reading it. I wanted to feel vindicated. But all I felt was tired. Because winning a war doesn't mean you leave the battlefield untouched. You just learn which scars to carry and which ones to let fade. That night, my son asked if we could put glow-in-the-dark stars on his ceiling. I want to fall asleep looking at something good, he said. So we did. And for the first time in forever, he slept without checking the door. Divorce doesn't end when the gavel falls. That's just the intermission. What comes next is quieter, crueler, and if you're not careful, it rewrites you. For weeks, I moved through life like I was trying on new skin. Every decision felt foreign. What to cook for dinner? What to say at school pickup? How to decorate the living room now that no one's criticizing the pillows? You don't realize how much of yourself you sacrifice in a broken marriage until you start hearing your own voice again, and it sounds unfamiliar. So I made small changes. Reclaimed spaces. I painted the hallway a deep navy blue. Hung photos, not posed, not professional. Just moments. My son playing in the leaves. The dog with its head out the window. A coffee mug half full beside a sketch pad I hadn't touched since college. I even dug out my old guitar. The strings were dusty. My fingers were out of shape. But every rusty chord was like a whisper from a version of me I thought I'd buried under compromise. I was becoming me again, painfully, slowly, and not without resistance. See, grief doesn't leave because it's told to. It lingers. It waits in the soft places, your favorite chair, your son's quiet good night, a song in the grocery store that hits just a little too hard. And sometimes it shows up in human form. It was late April when I saw her again. Not in court. Not on social media. In the supermarket. She was in the frozen aisle, looking for something, her eyes scanning shelves like she'd lost more than just dinner plans. Her hair was pulled back. No makeup. Just worn. The performance was gone. I should have walked the other way. But she saw me. And she froze. There wasn't anger in her face. No smugness. No theatrics. Just recognition of who I was. And who she no longer had the power to bend. She gave me a half nod, like a stranger acknowledging another at a funeral. And maybe that's what it was, the death of the image she built, now too heavy to carry. We didn't speak. I just walked past. But as I turned the corner, I glanced back once, and I caught it. She was crying. Not loud. Not dramatic. Just silent tears standing in front of the frozen peas like the world had shrunk too small to escape. I didn't feel satisfaction. I didn't feel pity either. I felt distance. The kind that isn't measured in miles, but in growth. Later that week, my son asked if he could join the science club. Said he wanted to build rockets. I told him sure. Signed the form. Smiled. He didn't look over his shoulder once when I dropped him off. That's what healing looks like sometimes. Not fireworks. Just a kid who forgets he used to flinch. It had been 6 months since the last court date. 6 months of routine. Stability. The kind of life people call boring. But when you've lived through chaos, boring is a luxury you guard like a crown jewel. Mornings were simple. Breakfast, backpacks, smiles that didn't feel forced. My son was thriving, grades up, therapy steady, nightmares rare. He even stopped sleeping with the nightlight. And me? I was finally able to sit on the porch with coffee and not feel like I had to brace for some legal ambush or emotional landmine. Peace became the default, not the exception. Until that one damn email. See, I'd kept an old Gmail account, the one I used back when we were still together. I never checked it. It was basically a graveyard of promotional spam, PTA messages, and digital dust. But one afternoon, cleaning out files on my laptop, I decided to purge it. I logged in. Same password I'd always used, a stupid inside joke from our honeymoon. And there it was, an unread message. From her. Dated over a year ago. Before the custody battle. Before the courtroom confessions. Before the house, the dog, the deal she tried to strike like we were bartering at a garage sale. The subject line read, "This isn't meant for you." That alone made my gut twist. I opened it. The message was short, but it detonated. I know I shouldn't have done it. I didn't think it would matter, but now I can't stop thinking about it. I didn't mean for him to find out. If he ever does, I'll say it was your fault. He'll believe me. He always believes me. No name. No context. But I knew exactly who she meant by him. Our son. And suddenly, the timing started clicking into place. I remembered the day our boy came home with questions, weird ones. Stuff like, "Did you and mom ever break up before I was born? And how come I don't have any baby pictures with both of you in them?" At the time, I thought it was just stuff he'd overheard. Divorce static. But now I wasn't so sure. So I started digging. Old texts. Archived messages. Photos on backup drives. And I found something. A folder, locked, but not encrypted. Titled July. I opened it. Inside were a few grainy photos I didn't recognize. Taken years ago. A baby, my son, but the setting wasn't familiar. No crib I'd built. No nursery we painted together. Just a plain beige room, hotel furniture. A man holding the baby. Not me. Heart in my throat, I zoomed in. The guy looked early 30s, square jaw, clean shave. Familiar. Too familiar. And then it hit me. He was one of her old coworkers. A name she used to drop in passing. Just a friend. Lunch meetings. Don't be paranoid. I checked the timestamp. 3 weeks after our son was born. 3 weeks I remember vividly because she said she was staying with her mom to recover. She hadn't. I don't know what hurt more, the betrayal or the fact that she'd buried it so deep. Even I hadn't thought to question it until now. And that email? That was the confession. She knew he might find out. And she was ready to blame me. Weaponize his identity if it came to that. I closed the laptop. Sat in silence. The kind of silence that makes the walls feel like they're listening. It wasn't just the marriage she torched. It was the truth. And the worst part? I couldn't unsee what I'd just seen. Now I had to decide, do I protect him from this? Or do I prepare him for the day he finds out? The thing about truth? It doesn't expire. You can bury it, ignore it, call it inconvenient, but it keeps breathing in the dark, waiting for the moment it can rise and look you dead in the eye. And now I had it. The photos. The email. The timestamp. And the gut-deep certainty that something I took for granted, that he was mine, had just been cracked open. But that's the part that'll gut you if you let it. The love I had for that boy? It didn't change. Not 1 ounce. Because fatherhood wasn't built in a lab or a clinic. It was built in 3 a.m. fevers, Halloween costumes, bedtime stories, and soccer games. Still, the question burned. So I did what no man wants to admit he even considered. I bought a test. Not the kind you pick up in a gas station on impulse. No, I went clinical. Quiet. Professional. Saliva swab. Discreet packaging. Results emailed directly to me. No chance of mix-ups. No chance of leaks. It took 5 days. The longest 5 days of my life. I went through the motions during that week like I was underwater. Every laugh with my kid? A good punch. Every moment of joy? Tinted with guilt. Because if the results said no, what did that make me? A liar? A fool? Or just a man who loved someone not biologically his? Then the results came in. I sat at the desk. The cursor blinked over the unopened message. I stared at it for a solid 10 minutes. Then I clicked. Probability of paternity, 0%. Just like that. Science spoke. And in one sterile percentage, a part of me died. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I didn't throw anything. I just sat there, staring at a number that felt more like a sentence. But after a few minutes, maybe an hour, I realized something strange. I wasn't angry. Not at him. Because he was still my son. She had lied. She had stolen a truth and buried it beneath years of manipulation. But the boy upstairs, sleeping with glow-in-the-dark stars over his head, he was still mine. Maybe not by blood, but in every other way that mattered. I kept the results. Didn't print them. Didn't copy them. Just locked them in a secure folder. One day, maybe I'll show him, when he's older, when he asks. Because that day will come. I can already feel it. And when it does, I'll be ready. Not to deny it, but to tell him what does matter. That I chose him. Every day. Even when I didn't know the truth. It had been 3 months since the DNA results. 3 months of quiet routines. Of homework and pancakes. Of healing that didn't always look pretty but stuck. My son never noticed the shift because I made sure he didn't have to. That was the point. That was the job. Then, one afternoon, I got a letter. Not an email. Not a text. A real, handwritten letter. One of those pale yellow envelopes you know isn't from anyone you want to hear from. It was from her. And I almost threw it away. But I didn't. Inside, folded like it held something sacred, was a single page in her sharp, small handwriting. Asterisk, I think about him every day. You think you've won, but there's a hole in me now that nothing fills. I made mistakes. I see that now. I didn't know how to stop needing control. I didn't know how to love without fear. But he's mine, and I want him to know that. I want visitation. If you fight me on this, I'll tell him. Everything. Asterisk. I read that last line 3 times. Not because I didn't understand it. Because I did. It was blackmail. She didn't know I already knew. Didn't know I'd already stared down the monster in the mirror and made peace with it. She thought I'd panic. That I'd flinch. She thought she still had a card to play. But what she didn't understand was, when you've already lost something, you don't fear losing it again. You build something better in its place. And that boy upstairs? He was my better. So I did what any father would do when a threat shows up in cursive. I went to my lawyer. We drafted a formal response. Not angry. Not emotional. Just legal. Clinical. Unshakable. We attached copies of the supervised visitation violation, the footage from the park, and a statement from the therapist who'd been working with my son. And then we filed for a restraining order. Not out of spite. Out of principle. Out of protection. You don't get to weaponize biology to rewrite history. You don't get to abandon your child emotionally, psychologically, and legally, and then waltz back in the moment your legacy feels threatened. She never replied. No appeal. No lawsuit. Just silence. The kind of silence that says, I thought I had leverage. I thought wrong. I told my son we got a letter. He asked if it was from her. I nodded. He didn't ask what it said. Just curled up next to me on the couch and whispered, "Can we watch that dinosaur movie again?" That was it. No courtroom. No drama. Just popcorn. Pillows. And the quiet truth that biology doesn't make you a parent. Choice does. It's funny how healing happens in the mundane. One morning you're measuring meds and monitoring behavior like your kid's on the verge of crumbling, and the next, you're arguing over which superhero is better, because suddenly that matters more than pain. It had been a year since the trial. Almost 8 months since that last letter. And for the first time in what felt like forever, we were normal. Not patched together normal. Real, breathing, functional normal. I coached his little league team. We lost every game, and it didn't matter. He laughed harder covered in dirt than he ever did in that sterile house she tried to call a home. The dog, yeah, the one-ear mutt, became our alarm clock, our movie buddy, and his best friend. They were inseparable. I'd find them curled up together like survivors of the same storm. School sent home a family tree assignment one day. My stomach dropped when he showed it to me. I waited for the hesitation, the questions. Instead, he handed me a crayon and said, "Want to help me draw the dog?" That was his family. Me. The dog. Maybe a few stars above the bed and a glow-in-the-dark moon. He didn't ask about her. Not once. And I didn't bring her up. That was the deal. Then, just as I started to believe we'd outrun the shadows, life knocked again. This time, in the form of a phone call. Blocked number. Instinct told me not to answer. But I did. The voice on the other end? Not hers. A man. Calm. Professional. Almost too careful with his words. "Mr. Delaney?" he asked. "I'm calling on behalf of an estate attorney handling the affairs of a Ms. Miranda Lawton." My heart stopped. She was dead. It took me a second to respond. "Come again." "She passed away 2 days ago. We're still confirming next of kin and handling preliminary documents. But your name came up in a sealed letter. One addressed to you and your son." I didn't speak. I just listened. He gave me the contact details. Asked for a good mailing address. I gave him the P.O. box. And then I hung up. My son came into the room, cereal bowl in hand, milk on his lip. "Everything okay?" I forced a smile. "Yeah, but just some paperwork stuff." I didn't tell him. Not yet. I needed time to think, to feel. Because how do you process the death of someone who spent years trying to dismantle your life? Someone who lied, manipulated, threatened. Someone who, at one point, you thought you'd grow old with? I didn't feel grief. I felt air. Like a weight had been lifted, and I didn't even know I was still carrying it. 2 days later, the letter arrived. Small, cream envelope. Handwritten. Just 2 names on the front. To Noah and Jacob. I stared at the envelope for over an hour. Didn't open it right away. Just held it, like it might bite, or bleed, or burn through my fingers. Because I knew. I knew it wasn't going to be simple. She never was. When I finally opened it, there were 2 sheets inside. One folded with my name. One for him. I read mine first. "Jacob, if you're reading this, I'm gone. And before you smile, because I know you will understand this, I never wanted things to end this way. But I made choices. I lived with them. And so will you. I don't expect forgiveness. I never did. But you need to hear this. He's not yours. You know that now. But what you don't know is why I did it. You were safe. Steady. You loved in a way I didn't understand. And I hated that. Because it meant I owed you honesty, and I wasn't capable of giving it. The other man? He was nothing. A fling. A mistake. But when I found out I was pregnant, I saw it as a second chance to trap you into loving me forever. And you did. Not because of blood, but because you're the kind of man I pretended to deserve. I ruined everything. Out of fear. Out of pride. But he loves you. Not me. That's what kills me most. Tell him whatever you want. He's better off believing the world is kinder than it is. But if he ever hates me, let him. Because I did earn it. Miranda. I folded the letter slowly. Like it might shatter. She was right about one thing. I didn't cry. I didn't smile, either. I just sat there, in the quiet, letting the poison bleed into air until it stopped stinging. Then I turned to the second letter. The one with my son's name on it. And I didn't open it. Not yet. Not because I was afraid. Because I respected him enough to let him decide when he wanted to know more. So I locked it in the same drawer where I kept the DNA results, the court papers, the drawings he'd made when he still called her mom. One day, when he's ready, I'll give it to him. And I'll be there, not to explain her choices, but to stand beside him while he finds his own truth in the wreckage. Until then, we live. Not like survivors. Like builders. Because that's what she never understood. Tearing things down is easy. But building something real? That's where the power is. It happened on a Wednesday. Midweek. Ordinary. The kind of day you'd never expect a tectonic shift. I was packing his lunch for school, turkey sandwich, no mustard, 2 Oreos if he remembered to take out the trash the night before. He sat at the table, swinging his feet, drawing something in the corner of his notebook. Then he asked, just like that, "Hey, Dad, why don't I look like you?" My hands froze over the Ziploc bag. I didn't drop it. Didn't flinch. But something inside me coiled tight. He wasn't being cruel. He wasn't even being curious in the way kids usually are. It wasn't about features or skin tone or hair color. It was pattern recognition. He's smart, observant, and now he was old enough to follow those threads. I turned around, leaned on the counter, looked him in the eyes. "You've been thinking about that for a while, huh?" I said. He nodded. Yeah. I pulled out the chair across from him and sat down. And I told him, everything? No, not everything. But the truth? Yes. I told him there was a time, long before he could remember, when things were complicated. That sometimes, adults make mistakes trying to fix the wrong things. I told him that Miranda, his biological mother, had made some choices that kept secrets from both of us. And then I said the most important sentence I've ever spoken. You might not be mine by blood, but you've always been mine by choice. And love built on choice? That's the strongest kind. He was quiet, chewed his lip, then asked, so who is my real dad? And that's when I gave him his letter. I told him, this is from her. I haven't read it. You can. Or not. It's yours. So is your story. All I ask is, when you read it, let's talk after. He took it, held it in both hands like it was made of glass. Didn't open it right away. Didn't ask anything else. He just nodded and went back to drawing. That night, he knocked on my door. Said he read the letter. Didn't cry. Didn't rage. Just sat next to me on the bed and said, I still want you to be my dad. Is that okay? I laughed. Not because it was funny, but because it felt like breathing again after a long time underwater. Kid, I said, I've always been your dad. You just caught up. He leaned into me. Didn't say a word. And for the first time in his young life, I felt him choose me. Not because he had to, but because he wanted to. It was a Sunday. Laundry humming, football on low in the background, dog curled up in a patch of sun by the sliding glass door. The kind of day you don't realize is perfect until something tries to change it. There was a knock. Not urgent, not aggressive, just deliberate. I wiped my hands, glanced at my son. He was building something with Legos, half-focused, humming under his breath. When I opened the door, I knew immediately who he was. The man from the photo. From the grainy, tucked-away folder that changed everything. Same jaw. Same eyes. His eyes. He looked nervous. Tired. Like a man who'd rehearsed this moment in the car 100 times and still wasn't sure how to say it right. Jacob, he asked. I nodded. Didn't invite him in. Didn't speak. My name's Colin. I think we need to talk. I didn't answer. Just stared. He shifted. I didn't know. About the kid. Not until after she passed. She left me a letter. Said she lied. Said she didn't tell either of us. I swear, man, if I had any idea. Stop. He did. I stepped outside, closed the door behind me. We stood there. 2 men connected by a ghost, and 1 boy who didn't ask for any of this. You knew her? I asked. Briefly, he said, shame coloring every syllable. It wasn't serious. Not for me, anyway. But I guess it was for her. I nodded slowly. She used people. It's what she did. He didn't argue. Look, he said, I'm not here to make a mess. I don't want to take anything. I don't even know what I want, exactly. I needed to see. To know if it's true. To know if I should do anything about it. I looked him over. Every instinct in me screamed to shut it down. To protect the world I'd built. To keep my son from one more shift in identity. But then I thought about the letter Miranda wrote. About her admitting she tried to trap me into loving her. And I realized she did the same to him. Just differently. He wasn't a threat. He was a casualty. So I said, you don't get to just do anything. Not yet. Not on your terms. I understand. You don't talk to him. You don't write him. You don't so much as look him up online. I understand. I paused. And maybe, when he's older, and if he wants to meet you, I'll tell him you stopped by. He nodded. A mix of gratitude and grief. And then he left. No drama. No claim. No scene. Just a man with a truth too heavy to hold, walking back to whatever life waited for him. I never told my son about that day. Not yet. Maybe when he's 18. Maybe when he has a kid of his own. Maybe never. Because love isn't about dumping every truth at someone's feet. It's about knowing when they're ready to carry it.